Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Gairu and I hope you're doing well today. So this is actually a continuation of a 12-part series where I talk about astrological houses. There are 12 houses, so of course, they're gonna be, well, it's a 12-part series. um, I actually am recording this outside. I've done a couple of recordings today outside in the park because it's been quite a lovely day so far. But now I see that it's getting a little bit windy, so I don't know how that's going to affect the quality of this audio. But I'm just gonna go ahead anyways and just record it. And when I go home tonight, I will. Yeah, I'll have a listen to it and see if it's something that is like worth uploading, and if it's really bad, I'll maybe then just record it over again. But like, if I do post it and it's like super windy and it's not clear to hear, just let me know in the comment section. Then I will, yeah, I'll redo it again. But I'm just gonna give it a try anyways because it's really, really so nice here in the park. I feel so inspired. It's the sky is clear. The birds are singing, and it's green. Summer is here. There's like music everywhere, and concerts all over the place. You might hear some music in the background. It's coming from somewhere. There's a concert somewhere. I can't exactly see it from here, but it must be quite close, obviously, since it's echoing here in the park. Um, I can't really make out the songs actually, or the I just hear it as noise, to be honest. But because I'm so far from it. But anyways, this is the focus of this recording is gonna be on the eighth house. Last time we talked about the seventh house. The seventh house has to do, with partnerships, with it's the descendant house, so it has to do with how we sort of like mirror ourselves, or how other people, how we sort of like get mirrored by other people, how we mirror other people. It's also the house of marriage, business opportunities, and yeah, things of that nature. It's quite an important house. Definitely shows a lot about the kinds of people that the individual is likely to maybe get married to, or it may also show the kinds of direction that the person might go, or whether they actually have the predisposition to be a business person or not. These are things that you can kind of observe, or you can kind of see it if you study the birth chart or the natal chart of an individual. um, and those are of course things that I do. So if you're interested in a birth chart analysis, do hit me up, and we'll get it done. We will get it done. So now we're going to focus on the eighth house. But before we dive right in, I just want to briefly just say thank you for the support. Thank you for always taking the time to listen to this. I know it might be a little bit tricky to kind of watch something that's not really a video. It's more of a podcast, so you don't really see me, you just hear my voice, and I hope it's not an annoying voice. But yeah, the purpose of this was just that that it's more of like a podcast, more of like an audio thing, where you can sort of just play it in the background while doing something, whether it's being in the park like I am now, or before going to sleep, or on your way to work, or just wherever you feel comfortable and you have time. But the whole point is just so that it doesn't take away from whatever you have to do just to watch a video, or to watch me in motion. Although some people maybe might like that more, but having just the audio means that you can kind of multitask, like listen to this while doing something else at the same time. So I have this tendency where I tend to go off topic. I just start talking and rambling, and then I forget where I was, and I have actually forgotten what I was going to say what the point was, but I think I was just doing the greetings and just showing my gratitude. It means a lot. Yes, that's what I was doing. It means a lot, and it shows that there is interest, um, in this type of thing. And of course, I welcome you guys on this journey, and it's definitely, um, yeah, something that like I'm really passionate about. So it's super great that we get to share this experience and sort of embark on this journey together, so to speak. Um, there's also a whole lot of other content and stuff that I have done that you guys will be able to find on the channel. So, uh, yeah, be sure to check those out. I've talked about elemental influences, I've talked about qualities, so like the cardinalities of the signs, the fixation of the signs. And I've also talked about the mutability of the signs as well. So, you should be able to find those there. I've talked about the deacons. I've talked about, um, major aspects as well in astrology. So, yeah, you should be able to find those there as well. Yeah, but now I am going to attempt to give you the key to your eighth house. Um, the eighth house is quite an interesting house, also, I have to say. It's a house that I also love looking at quite a lot, actually, when doing charts, birth charts for clients or friends. Or in the beginning, it was more for friends. But it's also something that I love to look at. I love to look at the eighth house because it shows it's quite a powerful house. It's a bit dark. It's not. Well, it's actually more darker than the seventh house. The seventh house is not really a dark house. I just consider it a painful house because you go through so much disappointments and so much, heartbreaks and things of that nature in the house of partnerships. For obvious reasons, it's the house of partnerships. Um, but the eighth house is a different kind of darkness. It's how we transform, and this is how maybe it kind of connects to the seventh house, even though like um, it's not like directly connected to the seventh house in terms of its elemental, aspects or influences, but because it transitions or it comes right after the seventh house, I guess it shows the way that we transform. Once we've gone through the disappointments, the heartbreaks from the seventh house, what lessons have we learned? How did we transform ourselves? How did we get rebirthed, after the death, of a relationship, after the death of a loved one? This could be, a spouse, a partner, you know, how do you handle crises, what's the transformation been for you? So these are the types of things that the eighth house is all about. It's about passion. It's about intensity. um, it's about psyche. It's also about occult. There's a certain mystery and mysticism to the eighth house, especially it being, the house of Scorpio. So it's like going into those deep, 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 dark, waters of the sea, of the ocean, and you just quite will never really know what you're gonna find there. But it's so that's what it is. It's like it's also serious, like very, very serious sex. This is not like fifth house casual sex. It's like this is like serious, serious, serious sex. It might not even always sometimes be mm, um, fun, you know. Um, it's the type of sex that is almost a power dynamic, kind of sex, or a sex where it's an exchange of, of energy, even, whether it's an unconscious exchange of energy or it's an unconscious, exchange of, energy. And we've kind of seen this, for example, like in movies, like, in like, movies that have like an occult influence, or like a dark influence where, there's like the devil, and he has sex with this woman or this person, and they steal their life force, or they just put this person under a spell, or um, that this person is just not able to overcome, and this person becomes a slave to the devil, because so it's that type of serious sex that it's like it's infused with passion and intensity, but it's like it's so, at the same time it's also like painful, and something can get lost in it, or something can die in it, and so, or something can get born out of it, so it's that type of serious sex, this is like the eighth house sex, and also destructive tendencies are in the eighth house, if it's like yeah, yeah, I'm breathing like heavily. It's like really heavy. I'm so invested in this. Like I'm imagining myself in the eighth house. um, so it's like yeah, like destructive tendencies. Like I don't know. I'm trying to think of like what planet would be here and what type of sign energy would kind of lead to destructive tendencies. Maybe running out of examples. Can you believe that? Um, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Well, if it comes to me, I'll give an example, but it rules. It's like it's all. It has to do with destructive tendencies, nonetheless. Because everything that Scorpio touches, it's like it kind of has to die, or it has to get transformed in some way or another. So yeah, and it's the house of. It's also about power, but I've talked about that. But it also importantly has to do with money, especially other people's money, how we manage other people's money, how we are maybe invested in other people's money, or even spending other people's money, it could also indicate to like gambling, gambling addictions might be also one way in which kind of like money is kind of sort of played out in this dynamic. And well, that's a good example of like destructive tendencies like gambling. So you might be somebody who always is stealing money or taking money from your spouse, or you're taking money from an institution. You apply for a grant, or you apply for some sort of loan from the bank or something, and then you just use it for gambling, which is, I guess it could be argued that it's more destructive, because there's a really good chance that you're actually going to lose all of that money, as opposed to actually maybe gaining it back or gaining more of it. So yeah, that's like an example, for example, an example of like a destructive, tendency. Um, yeah. So that's eighth house. That's eighth house. It rules the sex organs, obviously. So the body part that's most affected by it is like the sex, the sex organs. And as you can imagine, of course, if positively aspected, great, great pleasure, is emitted, or is felt, through the engagement of this body organs, and if poorly aspected, it's also possible that there might be like infertility issues, or there might be sexual dysfunction, um, uh, or like erectile dysfunctions might also be like one negative if it's poorly aspected. um, What else? Or like sexually transmitted diseases, might be something that you might be quite susceptible to picking up or to getting, just having that kind of bad luck where you just always pick up STDs and things of that nature that are connected to somehow the sex organs. Um, Again, also because, an eighth house person might have, uh, quite an active sex life or quite a high, sex drive because of this, intense and passionate energy that already comes with a house or anyways, so yeah, so there is that as well. But I would say that maybe more multiple partners are more the fifth house than the eighth house, like the casual sex, because that's like less detachment. This is not casual sex at all. You need to have like an intimate bond and connection with somebody. But still, I mean, there's quite a high sex drive. So if it's poorly aspected, you might find yourself like kind of, picking up this, STDs and things of that nature because it's connected to the body part that's ruled by this house. So yeah, and it's connected to the second house of Taurus and the fifth house, the dating house. No surprise there, and also the 11th house of Aquarius. Um, yeah, which is the communal house. So again, like an empty eighth house, you might still be able to pull your strengths and your talents from the other connected houses that I've mentioned. And even if those other connected houses are not um, positively aspected, you can still draw from other houses as well. There's always a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. But it will just be more harder, and it might not be as easy as when it's innately there or when it's like a talent. You might have to work towards your eighth house manifestations if it's empty or if it's poorly, aspected. Um, yeah. So what else do I have here? I talked about the money spending, and also seeing that this is a house that has to do with the occult. There is a lot of psychic power here. There's a lot of psychic and intuitive power here that's really almost like untapped. I think it's one of the more well. I think I should actually double check if it's the eighth or the 12th house. I mean, both are potentially very psychic houses, but I just don't know which one of the two is the more potent one. Um, I think maybe the 12th house is more potent, but it just needs more work to tap into that energy because of Neptune. Neptune always hides everything. So if you have like psychic abilities or high intuition represented in your 12th house, you have to work really hard towards it because Neptune is always going to hide it, and it's going to take a lot of practice and a lot of discipline to tap into that, psychic energy. Whereas I feel, I could be so wrong, this is just my interpretation from what I've studied, where I feel like with the psychic energy of the eighth house, is more easier to tap into compared to the 12th house. But this is what kind of maybe makes it more dangerous as opposed to more powerful than the 12th. What makes it more powerful is that it's easy to tap into, and I think people kind of tap into 8th house psychic energies or occult energies so easily, and while they're not really prepared and not really ready for it. This is also where people tend to get into this states, through the use of like alcohol, through the use of drugs, to alter the mind and try to sort of like escape into the, this the third dimension, like the opening the third eye and all of that type of thing. And so if you do it too soon, it can wreak havoc, for yourself and for people around you, because you've opened it's like the house of the Kundalini. So it's like you've opened up this house, this portal, and it's like, you know, and then you're shocked at the stuff that comes to you because you were not prepared for it. You may have kind of gone through it as an adventure, only to realize the implications of it, like after the damage has been done. So that's also something to be on the lookout for. But nonetheless, if you are with like a master like a master spiritualist, or somebody like that who's really really advanced, I'm not at that stage quite yet. Although I do spiritual work, but I'm not quite there yet. But like somebody who has many, many, many years of experience, they might sort of like help you to ease into your eighth house, psychic, abilities and powers. But you have to have energy there. Like if it's empty, that might be a little bit challenging, or if it's negatively aspected, then you might have a harder time accessing those as opposed to other people. Um, So yeah, and I talked about how you can be psychically drained or psychically exhausted and tired if you tap into this psychic energy without being fully prepared, and ready for it. Um, yeah. So yeah, I've mentioned that, and a lot of times also the individual might not be aware that they have this psychic ability until they've been awakened. So again, that's why it's important to do like meditation and get in touch with like spiritualists, masters of spirituality, and see what you have going on in your eighth house and whether and how you can sort of like benefit from it or navigate it rather. So yeah, but if it does work, if this thing turns out great and you do it the right way, the energy sort of opens up gradually, and you're able to sort of tap into it in like in healthy ways. It comes in like little bits of amounts, and you're always doing stuff to ground yourself, like coming into nature, spending time, in the forest, in the parks, things of that nature. Like, it helps to connect back and ground the energy again into earth, um which is something, of course, that I love doing because it really does help me, transmute some of that energy, feed it back into the plants and have them, you know, convert it back into, light again. But nonetheless, like if it's well done, this also indicates, somebody who has the potential to be, a good psychologist. It's not always just like, being a shaman or like being a spiritualist. It could also be somebody who's like a healer, like a energy healer, or psychic healer, or like I said, a great psychologist, or even just a great social worker, because any profession that allows you to utilize your psychic, that allows us to use our psychic energy or our intuition, pretty much falls into this eighth house as well. And so if good work is done with it and we can tap into that energy, then yeah, it shows, good potential for those types of things. Um, and You'll always be drawn to this house, like I've said, and like I've mentioned in previous recordings. Like, the more planets you have here, you'll always be drawn to that house. It will always be like a consistent theme that you have to like revisit. If there's a psychic ability that's laying there dormant, you might get to a point where you start having dreams. Maybe your ancestors, will start coming to you, or God will come to you. Some sort of divine energy will come to you and start trying to awaken you, or whisper ideas and thoughts, that you have this ability, or you have this, intuition that you need to activate. And then if you start paying attention to that and listening to that more, you'll find that suddenly you start feeling inspired to want to explore that side of you, or to want to start, learning more, advancing your knowledge about, those things, that field, whether in your case it would be psychology, for somebody else it might be social work, and someone else it would be like an energy healer, or like a reader. um, so yeah, so those are some of the things that happens in the eighth house. Did I write something else here? Just checking my notes, making sure I don't forget nothing. Um, I already talked about this. I shouldn't, tap into this with before being ready. Um, yeah, and also because I talked about how this is house of Kundalini or sexuality, not the same sexuality, like fifth house. These individuals might have a tendency to want to go through experiences that, like, it's like, oh, they'll be driven to experience the thrills of life, particularly like as they pertain to things that are transformational, like adventurous sex that you know leaves you guys like breathless, and just like totally transforms you guys, or just like any other like eighth house stuff that just they're just always kind of like living on the edge, type of thing, you know, playing, on the darker side of life, and tapping, one foot in and one foot out and type of thing. um, these are also things that this person is very, very likely to, um, yeah, to engage in. Anxiety could be one problem. Um, experienced by these people, especially when they start being urged by the universe to start, tapping into their psychic and intuitive abilities. They might, start experiencing a lot of anxieties because a lot of signs, when they start to awaken, like a lot of signs and a lot of, information downloads and things of that nature will just start coming to them. You'll meet people and feel vibes, or you'll meet people and get, certain impressions and so forth. And these things can be really overwhelming, when you start to have your awakening, because at least I know for me it was, and as it still is in some cases. And so, because you always, start thinking like, where does my energy start and where does it end? And where does the next person's energy start and where does it end? And, you always I even find myself sometimes, I would go into one environment, I would just feel a certain type of way, and then immediately go into another environment and I would feel a different kind of way, be it excitement or sadness, or I'll be sitting, in the bus next to somebody. And then I just kind of suddenly, my mood just changes, my feelings and energy and everything just changes. And I'm just like, oh, but I wasn't feeling this way a couple of minutes ago. What's going on? So these types of things, start happening more and more and more and more as these abilities, start activating, and it can lead to anxiety, for a lot of people, because it's not something that you can get like quick help with. If you have like a psychological problem, it's easy to go to your doctor and say you want to see a psychologist and explain what the symptoms might be. But when you're having this sort of like psychic things happening, metaphysical things happening, I mean, it's a little bit hard to explain to people that, hey, I'm kind of going through this thing that it's a little bit weird. I don't know what it is. Um, what should I do? you know? So you isolate yourself in some ways. I have gone through that myself also. And so then, uh, yeah, it can lead to some anxiety in some ways. And that's something that, should be on the lookout for if you have, this eighth house, like activated. Um, yeah. Uh, and also abilities to have out of body experiences and astral projections and things of that nature um, would be easy for an individual who have a loaded eighth house, would be easy to do these type of things. Um, yeah, but then, and then one final note before I wrap this off. I think going back again to the money aspect, um, this also shows an individual who, because this is also about other people's money, so it also shows the individual's ability to attract money to themselves. Either they would have the skills to somehow be able, whether it's applying for a business loan, like, and we're talking about like really, really large amounts of money, like, thousands, hundred thousands of, dollars, or even millions of dollars, to start a business, or to, to engage into some sort of research project, or whatever the case might be. It also shows individuals who kind of have the ability to access, those kinds of monies, whether it's money from a banking institution or some organization, or just sort of like public money, money that's the other people's money. So they'll always kind of know how to get to navigate their way, and to just know what to say and how to go through it. And this is no surprise. These people become your finance advisors. These people become your accountants, because they just have that ability to somehow. They just have a way with playing the money game, So that's one positive also with the eighth house. And yeah, I think with that said, and Uh, is there something else that comes to mind? I've talked about regeneration and reproduction. Um, so yeah, I think that's about it for the eighth house. In a nutshell, if there is something that you guys have an experience with, in terms of the eighth house, please do let me know. How does your eighth house look like? Do you have any planets there? Do you have any signs there? And yeah, have you had a positive experience with your eighth house? Is it still a challenge? Because it's quite a heavy house, honestly speaking. Um, do you have any how's your sex life? Because also this can be, if your eighth house is poorly aspected, you might be somebody who will have a difficult time. If you have Saturn, for example, in your eighth house, it might restrict, you know your sexual partners or your sexual activities. So sometimes sex is really hard to get, for some eighth house people. Or sometimes, it's there. You might see people that you potentially want to do the act with or whatever, but you can just feel that it has a more casual feeling to it, while you're craving for something that's like more intense and more passionate and more engaged. So yeah, so let me know what your experiences are with your, eighth houses, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you once again for the support, for liking, for sharing, for commenting. It helps the channel grow. It helps to show that there's an interest. And yeah, please share if you know somebody who, might also learn something, find this useful in some way or another. You know, please feel free to share. And for those who are new, I hope you picked up something. For other astrologers, I hope that there was hopefully a new perspective. Because I mean, for my astro family out there, I mean, of course, we're all studying these things and we're all passionate about it. But we also have our way of understanding it and our way of interpreting it. And of course, I also like listening and watching other astrologers also, and it's always nice to see their take on the houses and their perspectives on these energies and this vibration. So please do let me know if you're somebody who is also invested in this, what your thoughts are, and so forth. So yeah, with that said, thank you so much, and I'll try and put in timestamps also, just to kind of show where the main the main points are, so you can kind of skip through this, rumbling, for those who may not like it so much. But yeah, so thank you once again, and I will see you guys in the next, which will be the key to your ninth house, the house of long distance traveling, the house of higher education, the house of knowledge, um, and yeah, the house of Jupiter, house of Sagittarius, so the sign of Sagittarius. So yeah, philosophy, law, morality, all of that stuff. So that's ninth house. We're going to be exploring that in the next recording, and that's where I will be seeing you guys. So with that said, have a good day, and yeah, so ciao.